Hi guys, welcome to lesson number 1, March 30th, 2020, the war effort. Just wanted to talk to you at the beginning before you accessed all of the materials for this lesson to help conceptualize. And the objective for this lesson is so that you can see World War II is unique in the magnitude and breadth of the war effort at home. Everybody did something for the war effort, and it took many, many different forms. The first thing that you'll take a look at is the enlistment surge after Pearl Harbor. In December of 1941, things looked exceptionally dark for the United States. Remember, all of continental Europe is under Nazi rule. Our ships are being sunk in the Atlantic Ocean. And not only did Pearl Harbor go, but we also saw half of it destroyed, but we also saw the Philippines overran, Wake Island was overrun. And you can really get a sense of the fear that an invasion of the United States was looking to many like it might become a reality. But the country, as we talked about before when we did the war in the Pacific, and how the Japanese thought that we would not unify to fight a war, you can see how the country rallied after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Also, I think we watched some of this in class, but I also included for additional resources. There's a 5-minute video, but I only asked you to watch the first 2 minutes of it talking about enlistment. And then for additional resources, you can also watch President Roosevelt's Day That Will Live in Infamy speech. The next thing that you see is we talk about production, and there's a very short clip, a 2-minute clip that talks about wartime production. And I included, it's pretty long, but you can just take a quick look at it if you want, a 1944 government propaganda video about production. And then, of course, we go into the role that women played in production. And it talks about how many women entered the workforce that previously hadn't been in it, and really entering it in roles that were not common to have seen women in before. And it also talks about the amazing levels of output that we saw during the Second World War as that played an instrumental role in victory. I gave you some additional resources. I'm sure you're going to want to listen to the song Rosie the Riveter and download that to your iPod. And there is a propaganda video featuring Eleanor Roosevelt that talks about recruiting women workers and it's sort of a training for women workers. The next video is really short. All of these are really short. They're all about 2 minutes. It's simply called The War Effort. And they've got some people, whether it's Dennis Hopper, some other individuals that talk about everybody had to do something for the war effort. And if you talk to old people, like my parents, they just remember everything when they were little kids about being for the war effort. I think I shared with you the story in class about how my dad's family had to save the grease because somebody would collect that once a week to use for explosives, buying 10-cent stamps in school for war bonds. And it talks about some of the different things that people did as everybody felt they had to help out in the war effort. And then finally, the last piece talks about how the public viewed the war. And it's a short clip. It talks about newsreels. And then it goes on to not only talk about how the public saw the war in the newsreels, but then the demonization of the enemy. And we had already talked about, both in the Pacific and in Europe, how these were wars of aggression, these were perverse ideological wars of aggression with this perverted nationalism, that deemed enemies subhuman. But you see the effort that was made by the government to really convince the American public that this war needed to be won. So there's a short clip on that and some additional resources, some of the posters, and even included if you want to watch the Donald Duck De Fuhrer's face from 1943. So with this lesson, again, it's a couple of short videos and I put some additional resources, but conceptually, I just want you to see there's nothing like this. We talked about in World War I, how enlistment was really low. What was about 70,000 volunteered. So we had conscription. And we also talked about the massive mobilization effort, not only through the draft, but also through the CPI and through the War Productions Board. And we see a lot of similar things here, but it's a much more unified war effort during World War II. Okay.